My first time in South America, I was a young guy, and that band was, we were kind of wild and we were having fun. And I remember going into the hotel, the International Hotel on, I believe it was Copacabana Beach, right? And I remember going in, and the first thing we did is we went to the bar and we got some caipirinhas, right? And I'd never been to Brazil before. And I think it might have been everybody's first time there, Guns N' Roses. I just remember we had a lot of security, and I want to call them cops, but they look like cops. I just remember going, hey man, let's get the cocaine or whatever, because that's just what we did. We drank and here we were in South America, and there's beautiful women and fun. And so anyway, we partied, and Spider-Man was crawling up the building, and I remember the next day I got in the van, and here I was. I just joined the band, I just replaced Steven Adler, and it was my first show. I'm playing the biggest, Maracanã Stadium, 2 nights sold out, and here I was, up all night partying, but in those days, we were like pirates, we were like these crazy, and that was part of who we were, and it all felt right, if that makes any sense. And, I'm not a proponent of like telling people, hey, do what I did, because if you read the book, which you have, and then the new version will come out next year, but there's dark periods. Here I am, I'm partying, and I get a phone call, hey Matt, you're going to do a drum solo. And I didn't know till we were driving to the show that I was doing a drum solo. And, I hadn't done a drum solo really in the Cult, or I never really I was never a huge fan of drum solos, to be honest with you. I like being in a band. I like playing songs. I love watching John Bonham and Led Zeppelin do a drum solo, but there used to be a joke in rock and roll. That's when you leave to go get a beer. It was like, the guy's doing the drums. Oh, let's go get a beer. It's like, I didn't want to be the guy doing the drum solo when everyone else is going to get a beer. There was a period right before we left to go to the venue that they asked me, Axl's guy, Earl Gabadon, called me in my hotel room and said, Axl wants you to do this drum solo tonight. And I remember being up there, and I kind of was just winging it, I was just doing my thing. But I looked out, and there was 140,000 Brazilians going crazy. And I just kept going, I was like, and I was hitting my gong. And the next thing I know, I look over and I see Axl standing on the side of the stage. He's ready to come back on. And I'm like, I'm going to just keep going. I think I went for like 15 minutes, Yeah. Axl thought maybe I'd play a 5-minute drum solo, but I loved it. And after that, I did it every night. Axl was like, I love that. I want you to do it every night. And it was a way for him to go take a break, get a breath, because he, in those days, man, we did long shows. We did 2.5-hour shows. And if you're not a singer, you don't really understand how much that takes out of you, your air, your breath. It was hot. The humidity was insane, as it is in Brazil that time of year. And I remember everyone was just sweating, and, it was a chance for him to like take a breath and then come back and give it his all, No, I think you're only part of something that you should be. It's like, for me, my whole life's been about what happens to me next. It was, when it happened, it was weird. And of course, I'm not going to lie about that. And I talk about it in that version of the book changes a little bit, because as you go through your life, things happen to you. But if you don't, work out exactly what you're feeling about it, and then put yourself in the other person's shoes, you don't really have a good sense of why it went down that way.
Yeah.
And the only thing I can say about that particular situation is that I was in the band at the pinnacle moment of that particular group. And sure, they're out there and they're doing really well, and that's good for rock and roll, and that's good for the songs and the legacy of GNR, right? But I feel really good about the time that I was in the band, and to go out there and do it again. My life has taken a lot of different twists and turns. If GNR never would have broken up, we never would have had Velvet Revolver. I never would have gone back into the cult. I never would have created other things. I never would have done, I would have just stayed, I don't want to say complicit or complacent or whatever the word is that you say, where you sort of just like, you know, I see bands like Metallica, Green Day, they've always been in the same group. And I'm like, oh, am I jealous of that? Man, those guys are a machine. They're never going to break up. They're just a band, you know, U2, the Rolling Stones. You know, GNR didn't go down like that, but that's what made it what it was. And I look at things like that in my life now. I'm like, it went the way it was supposed to go. And now I'm doing all these other incredible projects, you know, and I'm still creating. And, you know, I think the fans want to see what they want to see, right?
Yeah.
But life doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. So I'm very proud of my time there. It gave me generated a whole other life for me. You know, it's opened up a lot of doors. Well, you know, it was a little strange because I said this in that version that it was confusing because when I first joined the band, you know, I actually called Shep Gordon, the manager, and sort of invited myself on board. Then Duff came with me. Now here's two guys from pretty big band. I would say equally as big as Alice Cooper, probably equally or bigger than Aerosmith. And, you know, Aerosmith maybe had a longer career, but I felt that we were equal to the other three guys. You know, and then you got an actor, Johnny Depp, pretty famous guy, but is he a musician? No. He's like, he plays guitar, but he didn't build his career in music. He built his career as an actor. That made him famous. So honestly, it was a little weird to be like, I'm not in the photograph, and Duff felt the same way. And it happened sort of by accident because we did a band photo, and then this very famous English photographer, Ross Halfin, Shep Gordon asked us to step out of the photo, and we turned around and there was three guys taking the photograph, and that became what they call the principals of the group, the three main guys. So I was happy to be there for that particular time, and then I left. You know, we decided that they were going to continue with Alice's backup band, and me and Duff stepped out first, and then I did a small tour with them. And it was fun for a minute, but it wasn't a real band. It wasn't like Velvet Revolver or GNR. It was more of like we went out and we played covers. And I love Alice Cooper. I love Joe. I love Johnny, was great. People think they know Johnny Depp, but, you know, I was able to travel with him. And I've known him since he came to Hollywood in the late 70s and early 80s. He came in the early 80s. I came here in the late 70s, but I met Johnny when he was just starting out. You know, and he came to LA as an actor. I mean, as a musician. You know, he wanted to be in a band, and then he became an actor by accident. So I remember when we went down and played Rock and Reel with Hollywood Vampires, and we'd only done 2 warm-up shows here in LA. And we got up on stage, and we went on before Queens of the Stone Age and System of the Down. Were you guys there that night? It was great. And Johnny turned around at me, and he looked at me, Johnny Depp, and he goes, "Oh, my God." I go, "Yeah, man." Welcome to Rock and Rio. I mean, this is the real deal. He came off stage. I remember he was like, "Oh my God, that was one of the greatest experiences of my life." That's what he said to me. We went out and had dinner afterwards. It was like me, him, and Joe, and Duff, and Johnny. I've never seen the guy happier. Like, that was his dream, to play rock and roll on a stage like that. And then we did it, and then, you know, I felt, for me, it was like, if I could be part of that and give him that, that's amazing. When I was in the band, it was different than it is now, right? We're all grown men, and we were young guys back then, and you know there was all these sort of influences around us, and you know it was a big machine, if you will, and you know that people took on that pressure in different ways. You know, Axel dealt with his pressure his way, and I dealt with mine with obviously, you know, we drank, and you know, but there was different reasons for drinking, and you know, in the book I kind of tell why for me, because it was a little bit of a scary thing to be involved in something that big and confusing for a young guy, because there's a lot of people coming at you, and like people want part of you and a piece of you, and so I look at the band and I'm like, you know what? The time that I was in the band, as chaotic as it was, and as crazy as it was for all the personalities in the band, when none of us were perfect. So I won't point the finger at any one guy. You know, we were always inebriated, and the one guy that wasn't was Axel. He was the one that was trying to get us all. So there was other ways to sort of deal with it. And to be honest, looking back, I wouldn't want it any other way, because that's what made great rock and roll. It was the edgiest, most real shit ever. And none of it was fabricated. What went down, went down. If we were late 2 hours, there was shit going on backstage. But when we came on stage, and you can go back and watch the old videos and go, holy shit, that shit was on fire. And yeah, because it was really on fire. It wasn't like we're backstage going, hey man, let's go out and have a great show. Hey, you know. Yeah, well, he's a really soft-spoken guy. He's definitely got like a sensitive side to him that is really sweet. But he's a perfectionist as a guitarist. You know, if you listen to those guitar solos on November Rain, Estranged, those elongated, melodic, he worked that shit out. He just didn't rip that one time. He was thinking, I'm going to create a melody. So he liked to do that without somebody like barking in his ear, like a guy like me, going, hey man, Slash, why don't you try it this way? I would never do that. I've done it to him, Velvet Revolver, but I don't remember ever bugging him about the way he played when I was in Guns N' Roses. We all just did what we did. And Velvet Revolver, we worked more together like that. I remember being in the studio with him when he was playing. But he liked to be by himself so he could work out what he was doing, you know? And it makes sense. I think I said that about some of the newer rock and roll bands in a press thing one time, and people asked me, well, what's the difference between rock and roll now and when you were in GNR? I said, there's no danger. Nothing's dangerous. Nothing's like, and I don't think they understood what that meant because they weren't there. I was there. So I felt danger. There was nights when I felt scared to be on stage. Bogota, Colombia, when we had a huge riot. You know, and if you weren't there, you don't know. So you can always, he goes, oh man, that guy's talking shit. What the fuck does he know? I'm like, well, fuck you too. It's like, I was there. You weren't. And I'm not patting myself on the back for that. I'm just stating facts. It's like, I felt danger. And you know, that band at that particular moment in time was the biggest band in the world. And everybody wanted to be, and when we toured through South America that first time, when we went through Venezuela and Bogota, Colombia, and you know, Chile, and we were playing stadiums, that had never really been done before. No band toured through that region in stadiums. And I remember talking to Anthony Kiedis and the Chili Peppers, and he was like kind of going on me about like, oh, I heard about you guys' riot. What the fuck happened? I go, you know what, man? be my guest. Take your band down there. See how it works out for you. It's like, in those days, it was like going into like, it was like outlaw country. Bogota, Colombia in the early 90s.
Yeah.
I remember we had armed vehicles and guys with machine guns and protecting us. It was like the Wild West. And, you know, like Rio was like, they had done it. Sao Paulo had done it, but these other regions around South America. So we started going into these places and playing early on, remember? Before bands had really, now bands tour all through South America like it's no big deal. But in those days, it was like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? They confiscated our airplane in Chile. You know, we had a military coup in Caracas, Venezuela. It's all in the book. Shit went down every day. It was like we had to escape Colombia because the cartel was, I mean, it was like, if I say it was dangerous, it was, trust me, it was dangerous. And that was the kind of band we were. We weren't afraid to like go and get up there. And Axel, you know, God bless him, he was the guy that was fucking the leader of the whole thing. And, you know, we were like, holy shit, you know, and he went out there and he created that energy and that tension that brought that kind of rock and roll. And I don't think you could ever redo it that way. In the rock and roll genre, and where's the next generation? What are you going to speak? What are you going to say to me that's going to make me really pay attention? You know, and with the climate and the things that are going on in the world, this is the time for rock and roll to speak. It's like in bad times, rock prevails because we've always been the underdog. So who gives a shit? And especially now, with the way social media is, it's like, put up whatever the fuck you want. Quit worrying about your record deal. It's like, that's rock and roll, and that's punk rock. And that's always been the rebellion and the mindset of rock and roll, right? Yeah. Speak your mind, do what you want. And rock and roll is out there. It's always been there.
Whoa.